Hello, everyone. Russell Goodman, Supply Chain Brain, Senior Editor here, welcoming you to One Rail's program today. We call it Prepping for Peak, how to level up your CX strategy this holiday season. By the way, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation, so please enter your questions in the Q&A box on your screen as the program unfolds. Our presenters will address as many questions as possible before we sign off, but not to worry. Any questions still pending, they will get to offline. Today, longer lead times, complex handoffs between logistics providers, data flow between disparate systems, all of these require a new way of thinking for efficient inventory moves from origin to the final customer, and for satisfactory customer experience. Even if you do everything perfectly, if you fail the final inch of the supply chain, you can lose a customer forever. Well, the holiday season will be here before we know it, and last mile delivery is crucial to the success of retailers and other shippers. In today's program, retail, supply chain, and rideshare experts will discuss the strategy needed to get retailers ready for this holiday season. Here's some of what you will learn today. When should shippers and retailers start preparing for the holiday season? What behaviors are triggering continued supply chain chaos? How can you ensure you have the right inventory in the right place? How does last mile delivery factor into the overall holiday shopping season to meet customer demand? And how can the gig economy and rideshare companies support delivery needs in the midst of ongoing workforce shortages? You're going to leave today's session with a comprehensive understanding of what you need for a truly merry holiday season delivery. Well, to walk us through this all-important area today are Justin Paris of Lyft Delivery, Steve Rowan, Retail Systems Research, and from One Rail, Matt Schultz. Justin is the head of Lyft Delivery, a national tech-focused, high-quality delivery service partner. And prior to his involvement with Lyft Delivery, Justin worked at Tesla and at Gigafactory 1. Steve, managing partner at Retail Systems Research, an industry market intelligence firm helping retailers make strategic information technology decisions and helping solution providers better meet retailers' needs. Matt Schultz, Vice President of Logistics Partnerships at One Rail. Matt has extensive background in scaling organizations through planning and development and operational management. And as an executive, Matt has made an impact across a number of verticals, including waste management and the fitness industry. Well, now to our speakers in the first, Steve Rowan of Retail Systems Research. Steve, welcome.
I just realized I was on mute, so thank you for the reminder, gentlemen. Thank you, very happy to be here. Russell, a pleasure. Looking forward to the conversation. Before we begin the panel part of this, I've been asked to share just a few slides from our most recent data to help sort of set the stage. As everyone here is well aware, it's been a confusing time. It's been a chaotic time. The last few years have brought challenges that the world has not seen really happen simultaneously ever before. We've had a contested election. We've had insurrection in the nation's capital. We've had global pandemic. We've had inflation. All of these things have happened before. They typically happen in a vacuum. They happen one thing and then 20 years later, another might occur. They've all happened in the last couple of years. And while all of this is going on, consumers who've been forced to stay home in many cases have become increasingly more demanding, increasingly more technologically savvy. And the balance between consumer and retailer has just been further thrown off. Again, if you're here, you're probably well aware of this. So my role is to very quickly just walk through some of the statistics of how that's played out when we talk to retailers themselves. If you're not familiar with my company, Retail Systems Research, we're very small. We just celebrated our 15-year anniversary. And our role is to not talk about things in the theoretical, and it's certainly not to compare one technologist against another. It is to talk to retailers, to survey them, and to find out the things that they're willing to share when they know that they're talking via the blanket of anonymity. These are data results from the last couple of years on any number of topics: consumer attitudes, store behaviors, e-commerce patterns, but probably most importantly, supply chain. And this is the state of retail as we see it, as retailers explain it to us. Don't need to waste a lot of time here. Everyone knows this has been a challenging time for retailers. For some, it's been very profitable. For some, not so much. But as Amazon continues to eat away at market share, it is those retailers who are able to creatively solve for customers' problems in ways that they might not have been able to 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that are doing the best. One of the things when we talk about the pandemic, as if it were, completely and totally removed from our recent history, is that it really did serve as an accelerant. Things that retailers told us would be a nice to have, even in, say, February 2020, things like omni-channel, things like buy online, pick up in store. We actually conducted a survey asking retailers very specifically about buy online, pick up in store, in January and February 2020. And the overwhelming majority told us that would be a lovely thing to have someday. It's been incredibly profitable in Europe. Maybe someday it'll come to the US as click and collect becomes buy online, pick up in store, buy online, return in store, help customers solve their own problems in the ways that they want to help solve them. I'm on my way to a party. I want to pick up something. I didn't have time. I don't have time to go really into the store and shop. I know what I want. Will it be ready for me? Retailers thought of these things and a lot of last mile delivery solutions as someday endeavors. What we learned very quickly is someday was not going to be enough. And it's funny, I was having a conversation with some retailers yesterday, and one of the things that came up is, I don't think we give enough credit for how quickly so many brands, both big brands, big box stores that we all know, as well as some of the smaller, more creative retailers, have met these omni-channel selling needs as quickly as they have. We saw companies that probably weren't going to do anything all that innovative become very innovative very quickly. And they were able to do it by having tough conversations internally and getting people who normally worked at odds with each other, say marketing folks and supply chain folks, to come together and solve these problems creatively. So this is a new definition of omni-channel selling. And as I move ahead here, I think I have lost control of these slides, perhaps. Yeah. It's all about keeping up with changing demand. I won't take the time to read these stats to you, but retailers recognize, particularly the better performing retailers, that in the next 12 to 18 months, they're going to need to improve their profitability in a volatile marketplace. And in order to do that, they're going to need to keep up with changing demand. These things are at odds with one another. It's very difficult when your margins are very small to keep investing in things that are going to help you put forward a better solution for consumers. But at the same time, if you don't, those margins get eaten into. So it's this vicious cycle that we see, that if retailers are not proactively thinking about how they can solve for these solutions for tomorrow, yesterday's practices are just not going to be good enough. The general takeaway from this data that you see in front of you right now, is that everyone, regardless of what they sell, where they're located, or what their sales performance, understands that there is going to be a great deal of change to the business model. We have not capped out the disruptive years. Just because vaccines rolled out and people have gone back to their offices does not mean that the next big disruptor is not around the corner. And all retailers, particularly those selling fast-moving consumer goods, are well aware of that and, quite frankly, anticipated. As we jump ahead here, one of the things that we point to in our research quite a bit is that winners, what we refer to as retail winners, those are retailers who are already outperforming their average and underperforming peers by sales. They don't tend to just do things differently. They tend to do very different things. And some of the things that we learned in our most recent supply chain research is that it all comes down to inventory visibility. You cannot make all of these grandiose promises of your ability to solve a consumer's problem if you don't know what you have, where you have, how many you have of it, and you can speak to that accurately. Everything else that falls around supply chain promises is beholden to having accurate visibility and the ability to speak as an internal organization that we can fulfill on these promises because we know what we have and where we have. And lastly, probably, it goes without saying, one of the last things I'll share with you here is while we talk an awful lot about the acceleration that has happened, that COVID has been an accelerant for things that would have happened in the next 10 years, probably the greatest takeaway for our industry from where retailers stand is that a lot of this lip service that was being paid to the consumer experience, as far as, we put the customer at the center of everything we do. We saw an awful lot of speeches on main stages at big industry events that spoke to this. But as consumers, I think we could all, sort of poke holes in that everywhere and say, just because someone says it doesn't mean that I feel it as a consumer. One of the big things that has changed in our research that retailers show us again and again is they truly are concerned about the consumer experience right now, and they recognize this is do or die time. They need to put up or shut up because Amazon doesn't really care about their profits. They continue to reinvest in R&D to find new ways to make consumers happy quickly, accurately. Retailers who are forward-thinking recognize they need to do the very same thing. So with that, I am going to hand it back over to Russell, and I believe he's going to walk us through what should be a really fascinating conversation with some really interesting people.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. I think you have framed the issues that we need to discuss in our panel chat coming up right now. I'm going to invite all three gentlemen, Steve and Matt and Justin, to participate in these questions. But let me just stick with Steve first. Steve, as consumers return to stores, are in-store operations ready for the changing preferences and retailers, preferences and expectations that shoppers have? So what would you say? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is no. Right.
Quit beating around the bush.
Yeah, I could back it up with a lot of anecdotal stories. I'm sure we all could here, because I think one of the easiest things to forget is that we all are consumers, and these anecdotal stories that we piece together in our own lives, they matter, because chances are if it's happening to you, it's probably happening in a similar fashion for others. Granted, no two shoppers are the same anymore, right? I might like to research things heavily and then go into the store and expect a consumer to be able to help me with some really small, finite details. There are other people that might walk into the store and have zero expectations, that say, I just want to be left alone. I've already done all my research. It's very rare that people walk in as this blank canvas anymore. Oh my God, what is this store? What do you sell? Do I need 10 of these? It just doesn't happen that often. But by and large, and I'm very interested to hear what Matt and Justin have to say about it, by and large, store systems, store processes, and the people that are in those stores are ill-equipped, ill-trained, and under-prepared to help facilitate whatever that particular shopper's challenges may be.
Before we hear from either of those gentlemen, let me just follow-up question though. Because the customer experience is so very important, let's talk about technology. What tech should retailers be investing in if they're going to provide excellent, exceptional customer experience? What do you say?
For me, or are we opening it up?
Open it up to you, to Justin, to Matt, whomever.
I will happily weigh in on that, but let's hear from somebody else. I'm already getting tired of my own voice here.
Okay.
Well, I mean, from our standpoint, it would be an orchestration platform. So from the delivery aspect of things, not so much the selling. It would be you want to make sure the retailers and the shippers are focused on what they do best, and that is taking care of the customer's needs. in the store, on the phone, wherever that is, and let the delivery partners do that work. And an orchestration platform helps them do that.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with Matt there. I think that investing in the right partnerships, both in terms of technology and providers, is a core investment. And then I think there's also a level of kind of internal adoption and training and getting cycles through these partnerships and these new capabilities. Doing last mile delivery and on-demand delivery is something that has been done at scale and is being done at scale, but doesn't happen overnight. And I think kind of investing in the partnerships and the experience and the internal know-how to do that at scale is core.
Great information there. Let's kind of look down the road just a bit. A question for Matt. Matt, by 2025, it seems to me, on-demand delivery is expected to take up 20% of delivery volume. So with that in mind, what are some of the predictions or trends that you expect to take flight to help circulate this demand? What do you say?
Well, Russell, I think the biggest trend that we see with shippers today is already looking outside of their own fleets to that external capacity, right? So they can't handle the needs of today. And forget about the holiday season, but just today they can't handle it. So they're looking outside of that at this point already. So having that external capacity is very critical. It helps them make more sustainable choices and optimize their assets and workforce. This meets the customer's demands and makes that omnichannel experience the way they need it. Another trend, though, would be that shippers are looking for a complete orchestration platform, as I mentioned before. Instead of having a one-stop shop as a shop of sorts. Instead of the shippers, having different avenues of deliveries and different platforms, they're looking for that all-in-one solution, so shippers can seamlessly go between their internal and external fleets with our network marketplace, maintaining the same brand presence and delivery experience.
I want to turn to Justin. I think this is in his bailiwick. Justin, the question is this: how important, in your view, is flexible delivery options now to retailers? And I guess a follow-up would be, do you think customer demand for rapid delivery is something that is here to stay? So what say you, sir?
Yeah, I love the question, Russell. Thank you. Yeah, we believe that consumer demand for rapid delivery is absolutely here to stay and is going to be, a very fundamental part of fulfillment going forward. A recent survey showed that 80% of shoppers want same-day shipping, and 2/3 want their purchases even quicker, within 1 to 3 hours, basically on demand. So, looking at it even further, and even kind of more historically, a quarter of shoppers would abandon their cart if their online cart, if same-day shipping wasn't available. So we believe, and we've seen in the data, that offering flexible delivery options will not simply be a competitive advantage going forward. It's going to be an absolute business imperative. Today, only roughly a quarter of retailers offer same-day delivery, but we could expect this to at least triple by 2025. And so retailers who start implementing these flexible delivery solutions that offer on-demand same-day fulfillment will be ahead of the competition.
Yeah, I don't think that the demand part can be overestimated. When you think about how much all of our lives have changed, how much our shopping patterns have changed, we were asked, gosh, probably 5 years ago now, by a global company to do some private research around when consumers abandon carts, right? And we're not talking about the digital world, we're talking about the physical world. And the preface of that was, it's holiday, we're in Australia, we're in Germany, we're in China, we're in Japan, and we surveyed 1,000 consumers in each one of those markets, and then 100 retailers in each one of those markets. And the question was, as a consumer, when do you abandon your cart? When do you just decide that checkout lines are too long, stores aren't well enough supplied, whatever it might be? And then we asked retailers, when do you think this happens? And the break in understanding between those two things was so stark. Retailers all over the world, regardless of where they were, particularly for some reason in Germany, were saying, not a problem. Our consumers never abandon us. You know, they come into our stores, we got them, they're ours. And the consumers were saying, you don't understand. I do this every year at least once. At least once I'll go shopping for the holidays and walk away from either I'll just walk in and look at the line and say, absolutely not. Or I'll go around the store and start to fill things out and then realize they don't have what I need and just leave my cart wherever it might be. So historically, there's a fundamental break between retailers overestimating their own prowess and what consumers say is their actual customer experience. When we look at the world today, I shudder to think how that would look in an online sense, because there is so much that goes into clicking that buy button that most retailers are either just starting to think about or are not thinking about enough yet. Let's put it that way. About how quickly can I get this? If I change my mind and I decide that I'm moving from one location to another, can I reroute that shipment? Are there, ways to promise me when I will get this? Are there not? Do I take that risk? All of these factors, we're all gaming this. We're all sort of hacking our way through the shopping experience to put together something that can solve for those complexities in ways that retailers are probably either underestimating or not fully aware of, however you choose to look at it. And I would imagine that if we were to conduct, similar research to what I just shared with you about consumer expectations versus retailer fulfillment, a year from now, we'll see that chasm grow. So it falls to a different mode of thinking. And, we've been around for a long time, so I forgive me if I repeat myself. And I sometimes get a little bit, weary of saying retail winners don't win by accident, but they don't. They win because they do very different things and they think about the world differently. And in every bit of research that we write, and we do 10, 12 reports a year, we offer recommendations for how more retailers can follow winners' lead. And it's always very simple. It's think about this particular problem differently. Think about that particular problem differently. Do not rely on whatever got us here is going to get us there, because it's not.
Just amazing how we cannot underestimate just how important customer expectation and experience are. Very, very important. Thank you for that insight, Steve. Matt, I want to turn to you just a moment. I got a question about the gig economy. What would you say? How do I harness the power of the gig economy to offer same-day fulfillment and delivery? What do you say?
So, Russell, with harnessing the power of the gig, the gig networks, I mean, a platform like OneRail allows those gig workers to be dispatched for deliveries or multiple batch deliveries when it makes sense for shippers, right? So along with a platform like OneRail, we work hand in glove with your existing driver network, but because consumer demand for on-demand, same-day, and next-day deliveries is so high, we can offer a range of delivery options across multiple vehicle types in every market across the United States because of that gig network. With that access, it gives the shippers peace of mind that their delivery is going to get there when it needs to get there. For the gig economy workers in general, or the delivery companies, with a rapid onboarding process for gig workers, it lets them quickly participate in the OneRail delivery program or any program. Part of that is reviewing with each courier the entity shipping rules, the regulations, the pickup and drop off, all those different rules and regulations that go into the pickups. We bring that all in-house, platforms like ours. So the delivery experience and the driver experience is pretty much always the same. And access, obviously, to reliable and vetted gig workers through our partnerships allows an efficient and consistent delivery experience for consumers, and our customers can maintain their brand image that way.
It occurs to me that a gig worker is not necessarily going to be working for just one retailer. We'll be working for multiple folks in that space, multiple retailers. So I guess the question would be best practices, to make this easy for the retailer and for the gig worker who's carrying out orders from a number of bosses, if you will. What would you say?
Oh, I would say consistency, to tell you the truth. I mean, consistency breeds loyalty. And the more consistent you become with your deliveries and that experience, the more loyal your gig network, any network, will be to that delivery and that shipper.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, again, anecdotal stuff is fun to share at a cocktail party. But I think a lot of us were exposed, particularly early on in the early months of the pandemic, to trying to solve problems that we used to solve ourselves by going out to stores, by having them delivered, whether it was groceries or whatever it might have been. And I, for one, can say I was legitimately shocked at how clunky and unsophisticated a lot of those solutions were at that time. There is significant room for improvement, and obviously improvement has been made, but making that, obviously, the consumer side is where we focus. So the machinations behind the scenes that make it easier for that particular employee to be able to move between, delivering things from CVS to delivering things from Home Depot to delivering things from the grocery store, they matter. But from a consumer point of view, to have that seamlessly, they don't care, right? There is almost a level of disdain for, don't make me think about how you do this. Do it for me, do it cleanly, do it quickly. As inflation continues, maybe do it cheaply because my dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. Those are very difficult things. But unfortunately, they're becoming table stakes.
I want to talk about, as long as we're talking about delivery, let's talk about sustainability. How does offering sustainable delivery options influence consumers? Let me throw that question out to Matt first. Anybody else wants to chime in, please do. What do you say?
So, nearly 70% and growing say sustainability or sustainable delivery offerings are more important, and almost half customers are willing to pay more for that sustainable product and delivery. So inherent to our platform, we offer sustainable choices, so shippers reap those benefits automatically. So, those sustainability options, route optimization, batching and clubbing of orders, so we're not, hitting multiple customers at different times during the day. It leads to more successful deliveries. And a platform like ours has the flexibility to meet business needs and customer demands. So offering sustainable choices first, if that's important to the shipper, then that's important to us as well. And we can do that. One great example, working with Lyft, a great percentage of their drivers and their gig employees are in hybrid and EV vehicles. And if the customer or the shipper wants to choose that option, they very well can choose that option of having their delivery delivered by a sustainable vehicle.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that. Justin, is that something that you're seeing traction with? Are people electing to say, I don't want my delivery showing up in a Lincoln Navigator, I'd rather have it show up in a Prius?
Yeah, great question. So we have kind of on our own volition, and because it's kind of one of Lyft's core tenets, increase the share of hybrid and electric vehicles in our fleet. A big portion of what Lyft does is provide vehicles to drivers, so people who otherwise would not have access to vehicles, not be able to drive on our platform. And many of those vehicles and the partnerships that we purchase them under are hybrid and EV. We don't today expose to the merchant quite yet, or the shipper, what is EV and what is hybrid, but that is certainly something we'll want to pass on, as Matt mentioned. When it comes to kind of cart abandonment and conversion, knowing that the sustainable fulfillment solution is extremely important to merchants. And again, sustainability has been a core tenet of Lyft's mission, and a significant portion of the fleet that we put out there and provide to drivers is EV and hybrid.
That's cool.
I just want to remind everybody watching to send in your questions, put those in the Q&A area, and we will get to as many of those as we can today as time permits. Justin, I'm glad you took that question, because I want to stick with you for just a moment. Got a question about the relationship between Lyft and OneRail. But let me just say, let me ask, is it fair to say this? Old school track and trace technology no longer suffices, as more and more customers desire real-time visibility throughout the process. Would you say that is definitely the case?
Absolutely. People want more data, and they want it now. They want to know what's happening and where their goods are. And so Lyft leverages our rideshare best-in-class destination tracking API to give retailers full step-by-step and real-time transparency into the delivery status and location. What is happening? Is it picked up? Is it en route? Has it been dropped off? And with virtually zero latency when it comes to customer perception.
So it's fair to say then that there's some serious value that the consumer is going to obtain, by dint of utilizing this partnership between Lyft and OneRail.
Absolutely. Consumer and also the shipper. I do need to point out that one of the core benefits of a white label delivery service provider like Lyft Delivery is that retailers maintain full ownership of their consumer and customer experience, including how they dispatch that display tracking information to the consumer. So it's a totally unbranded experience. We will provide the information what's happening in real time, and that can be surfaced to the consumer with no conflicts of interest. With OneRail also, Lyft Delivery provides this tracking information. We also provide proof of delivery via photo confirmation or signature capture and other custom features that provide, again, real-time updates into the delivery status and driver location.
This might be a little bit out of scope, but do you guys have metrics on how often both retailer and consumer are looking at that? Obviously, in the retailer, it would be aggregate, right? It would be like, how often are you meeting your, hitting your dance marks, making sure that you're getting your delivery on time? But do you have metrics on how closely consumers are actually watching that transaction? Do you just assume everybody's watching every step of it?
Great question. We don't track, how often they look at it. I do know that we provide it, again, on a virtually recurring basis through the API integration. And we do know that, in scenarios where something is delayed, which is a very small percentage of orders, but the reaction time on the part of the merchant or shipper can be very quick, right? So our impression is there are kind of eyes on the data that we're sending, and that someone is there to react should something come slightly off nominal.
That's really cool. That's really
and
cool.
And I'll add, although the retailer might not, in our cases, we do. So, part of being part of OneRail and part of our delivery network is that we have scorecards, and those scorecards will track PODs, they'll track signatures, they will track all the information, on-time rates and all that jazz as well. But, we are tracking all that information. We are looking at that. So that allows us to coach our courier partners that we have on board our platform.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting.
Great services there. Steve, as an observer of the retail industry overall, here's a question that I'd like to put to you. And I think it's something it's something we're seeing more and more and more: returns. The question is this: how important are returns to the customer experience?
Paramount. Vital. So I could riff on this for all the time we have. So I'll try to edit myself here, but one of the really advantageous things that came about as the result of the pandemic was retailers who had no ability to accept online orders in stores as returns were forced to do so. And that's great, right? There was a functionality. There were many stores that you could buy something online, bring it to the store in, say, December 2019 and say, I bought this online, I'd like to return it. And they just say, we can't. We don't have the ability to do that. And consumers had to turn around and walk away and say, that's the way it is, right? That became a non-starter in about March 2020, right? You had to take it back. The good news is there was widespread recognition of this, and retailers of all stripes and sizes started taking back everything and anything. A couple of things were born out of that. One, the processes were not elegant, right? You would just instruct your associates, take it back at the customer service counter, throw it behind the counter, give them their money back, whatever it takes to not lose them as a customer. We'll figure it out later. That is not sustainable. And I mean sustainable in both the business processes and also from everything that we're talking about from a sustainability, environmental sustainability point of view. We're now starting to see a lot more investment in proper returns management. And that's, again, something that's been long overdue. But by the same token, I think as consumers, we've all been conditioned to think, I don't need to worry about size. I don't need to worry about fit. I don't need to worry about color. I can just order everything I want, keep the one or two things that I want, and then go into a store and return it or send it all back. And it's made for some really bad shopping behaviors. And I think we're starting to see quite a few examples of creative and clever retailers who understand what's going on within their own four walls, putting some parameters around that. They're not turning away returns because they have no ability to process them. They're trying to interact with consumers when they see shopping behaviors that are going to be expensive and bad for the planet. And I'll give a really short example. I have a friend who is the worst kind of shopper there is. He's got plenty of money and nothing but time, and he does a bunch of research, and he loves doing outdoor, activities. And he'll buy 5 of one thing, keep the one he likes, and return the other 4. And he tried doing it the other day with mountain bikes. And he tried buying 5 $6,000 mountain bikes. And the retailer contacted him and said, no, we'd love to sell you $30,000 worth of mountain bikes right now, but we know what you're going to do. We know you're going to return 4 of them or 5 of them. So returns management, both in capability and in intelligence, is becoming absolutely vital to retail, because we all know every time that inventory changes hands, it costs money. Every time that inventory needs to be repackaged or repurposed or sold at a discount, it costs money. So there is a lot of progress that needs to be made in the returns management part of the world, and we're excited to see that it's finally getting the attention it deserves.
Matt, let me ask you to address that. I guess the argument is that since returns have become so very important, do you see consumers possibly gravitating toward those brands that make that whole process that Steve said used to be so ugly, make that process of returning items easy? Do you see that?
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Steve just said. It's making that process as simple as possible. Brands will gain more loyalty over the long term, but it starts with the process, right? They've got to have the correct process in place, and part of that is to have the right partner that is not, doing these returns as hot shots and just going to pick up. I mean, this is something that's got to be well thought out, just like it is today for normal delivery from a shipper. That thought process has got to in turn be right on pace with the returns as well. And as long as they have that process in place, the shippers won't erode their margins and productivity that way, and we won't be harming the earth as much.
I wonder, do you have an example how retailers can make it easy to offer returns for consumers and yet still be cost effective? Because clearly, customer experience top of mind, but right below it has got to be cost.
Right.
And again, I think it's going to come with that, with having the right partner platform like ours in that process. Because with a platform like ours, we could generate batched and club delivery. So we're not just, willy-nilly going out there and sending a driver here, sending a driver there. We are actually out there doing the same type of work we do with our shippers, with batching deliveries, putting them together, scheduling routes, and those types of items that in time reduce those costs, those shipping costs.
Gentlemen, these have been some terrific responses. Great conversation so far. I think very, very useful information. Questions are just rolling in from folks, and we need to get to some of them. Again, folks, those we don't get to today during the program, we will get to offline. We will respond. But let's see. Person is asking or saying, we only have 15 stores and we are regionalized in the Northeast. Are we too small of a business to use a company like OneRail for our delivery? Well, that's a very interesting question. So I guess, Matt, you're the one to answer that. What do you say?
Well, I think I'm going to answer that with a question. And can that SMB or specialty retailer afford not to do it at this point in time? If they want to compete, they have to look at programs and platforms like OneRail. Specialty and SMB is a great use case for OneRail. Our solution services specialty and SMB shippers to global enterprise due to our ability to scale. By utilizing our service for last mile or service like ours for fulfillment and delivery, store employees can spend more time with the customers and not so much on the shipping experience. They can work with them on their shopping experience, right? With the rise of e-commerce and retailers responding to customer demand, we believe increasing customer loyalty can be attributed directly to a great delivery experience. And we want to be part of that. And we are part of that in many cases.
Yeah, I'll also just add to what Matt was saying is I thinking of a use case of 15 stores is a great example of where kind of gig economy delivery services pay the most dividends. And that, for 15 stores, I can imagine it might be difficult to invest the CapEx and keep all those drivers fully utilized and doing delivery. With the gig economy delivery network through One Rail and Lyft, you have the flexibility to get your deliveries done, but not be incurring all this downtime and the deadheading required going between your location and a given customer. So I think it's actually a great use case for our product here.
Yeah, and I mean, just in the theoretical, I'll jump in and say I don't think size should be an issue for any of this, because the largest retailers in the world are trying to do pilot programs, imagining that they were a 15-store brand, right? This is an opportunity to solve. Think about it. As shoppers, we're not just trying to buy something. We're trying to solve a challenge that we have, a problem that we have. I have a party I need to go to. I have a gift I need to give. Whatever the particular challenges that we're trying to solve for that day. I would argue that the smallest retailers, in a lot of ways here, and we see this over and over again in our research, are the ones who are most experimental and are most willing to try new creative solutions to quote unquote delight customers. I know, that term gets overused, but we don't see a lot of delighted customers for, enormous big box retailers all the time. Sometimes it's the smallest, most nimble who are able to experiment, try new ideas, fail fast, kick them to the curb, try something new. So size shouldn't matter. Big, small, US, Europe, doesn't matter where. If you sell something to consumers, you should be thinking about how you're going to get it to them in the best ways possible to help solve their issues right now. I think we may have lost Russell.
Hey guys,
Hey, it's Ralph.
I think Russell's having some technical difficulty. So let me ask the next question. And hi everyone, I'm Ralph Henderson, executive producer of Supply Chain Brain. The next question is for Steve, actually. And Steve, do you think brick and mortar is here to stay, and will it be making a comeback?
Forever and ever and ever and ever. Yeah. Brick and mortar. I loved the headlines before the pandemic struck about is brick and mortar dead? Are we going to see the great culling of, are all stores going to close? No. It's a hybrid world. It's been a hybrid world for a long time. I can't count how many times I've been to conferences where someone says, well, last year e-commerce accounted for 12% of sales, and next year it's gonna be 14. And it doesn't matter. We all shop in this hybrid way where we piece together whatever solution we want. But at the end of the day, we're social animals. We want to leave our homes. If we learned one thing over the last 24 months, it's let me rephrase that. Not all of us want to stay home all the time, right? There are certain of us that want to go out, look, touch, try something on, shake it, listen to it. Is this what I want? Is this not what I want? I personally was going to hardware stores in 2020 just to do it, just to get the hell out of the house. I didn't even need a flathead screwdriver, but why not, right? Physical stores will exist forever in very different forms. I think the takeaway that we try to hammer home in our research over and over again, because all my partners and I, we're all former retailers. So we understand it's not an easy time to be a retailer. And we empathize with that. We empathize with the fact that consumers are becoming a real, I don't want to say pain in the ass, but consumers are becoming a real pain in the ass, right? I mean, they're incredibly informed, they're incredibly demanding, and they have no tolerance. They have no tolerance for when you don't solve their problem effectively. So don't think of stores as stores to fill blank vessels with whatever widgets it is that you sell. Think of them as a chance to offer an experience. And they'll be here forever. As long as people want to get out of their homes and experience commerce, there will be a role for stores. That role will change, but they'll always be.
Yeah, no, and the numbers back you up. When you think about what has flourished in the last 12 months, you look at professional sporting events and outdoor and even indoor concerts. And it's amazing how we do need to come together. So your point's valid. And I think the people listening and watching this need to realize that that pertains to brick and mortar stores because of the things that you said. So thank you for that. I thought that was really well said. Here is one that just came in from one of our viewers. What are ways to improve and sustain consistency? Specifically, are there any programs that can be implemented or changes in technology to help the foundation? And Matt, maybe I'll start with you and then the other guys can chime in.
I guess that, with a platform like OneRail, it means that you're offering the most reliable and cost-effective choices. So, optimizing, those costs and the reliability is going to be important across the board.
Okay. And Justin, what do you think about that?
Yeah, great question. I think from my perspective, it's not so much a technology factor. What we see, we've had a couple of different rollouts with different shippers and partners. It's very much the human factors involved, right? Are the kind of employees who are using OneRail service and by extension Lyft service kind of aware of how it works? Is there a clean UI for them to interact with? Do they understand how they're dispatching between their internal services and their external services like a partner like Lyft? So I think kind of, I said at the beginning of the webinar, I would say it again, I do think that kind of training and awareness is the biggest piece of it. And then it's perhaps a bit of a self-fulfilling cycle, but consistency and sustainability in that where there's consistent demand, where drivers are being dispatched on a recurring basis, drivers tend to return to. Drivers can get to know the location, get to like these deliveries, and there tends to be a very quickly accelerating flywheel fulfillment there. Where there's kind of wild or kind of large week-to-week spikes, it tends to be a little bit, tends to be a little bit less smooth. But definitely, I think human factors and awareness, and then consistency and sustained operations.
Yeah. So
I'll just echo. I mean, Justin nailed it right on the head. But consistency isn't always something that can be controlled through technology. It helps. Someone has to be accountable, right? This has to be someone's job, and their job and their livelihood has to depend on it. If you want to provide a consistent experience online, you need a chief online someone. If you want a consistent experience across between your stores and your online, you need a chief customer experience officer. If you want to have consistent deliveries and consistent fulfillment, you need a chief fulfillment officer. It doesn't mean to be that title. I'm just saying it needs to be someone whose livelihood and performance, or livelihood is determined by that performance. Because otherwise, it's really easy to fall through the cracks. Yeah, we solve this problem sometimes, without the understanding of how often you really solve for it, how well you solve for it, and what customer sentiment really is. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. The idea of secret shoppers, right? Back in the day, we're all of maybe not Justin, but the rest of us are all of a certain age, right? We probably remember that. That served a vital role. The fear of a store-based employee, of maybe the person that's standing in front of you is going to report back to corporate and say how well you did or did not fulfill on the brand promise, was a real thing. There need to be digital versions of that in all of these regards.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for allowing me to ask a question or two. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Russell. Mr. Russell, we still have the last two questions that were sent in prior to the show, and then the question that we have in the panel before we get to the end of the show. So I just wanted to turn it back over to you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you. I appreciate that. Speaking of customer experience, I didn't have the best experience with my computer just now, but there we are. Matt, here's one of the questions that's come in. In fact, it's come in quite a number of times because people are always concerned about the money. How can I optimize my costs if I need to use different delivery options? Well, what do you say?
Well, again, I think I've said it a few times, during our webinar here. It's a platform like OneRail matches the shipment to the correct delivery asset and the SLA. So not every delivery has to be on demand. Not every delivery has to be same day. It can be next day. This means we can offer the most reliable and cost-effective choices real time. We don't have to, jump right into it and just say, hey, get this out the door and get that to the customer. We can also optimize costs by batching orders, obviously, and optimizing routes. So if we have those orders for the day coming in and it's the same day or next day, those routes can be optimized, and optimizing routes and batching orders and clubbing orders, whether it's internal, external fleet, is going to save money in the end. And it will see it will have immediate impact with any business.
So optimizing my internal fleet utilization and having capacity gap coverage for spikes, then walk me through that process just a bit. Drill down into that, if you would, just a bit, and tell me how I might pull that off, Matt.
So we have, for us, we have many different customers, and all the customers do everything above, right? So some we just manage their internal fleets. Some we manage their external fleets. Our external fleets, obviously, for them, and some do both. They do a hybrid of both. So, if it's going to be where the customer would like their internal fleet first, great. When their internal fleet is out on the road, then it spins down to our external fleet. Whether that's, again, same day, next day, on demand, we're optimizing those routes and those deliveries for the customer.
Yeah, and I think as part of that, we see that sometimes shippers will know that on a given day, they're just not going to have the critical mass of deliveries to keep an in-house driver busy, and thus they'll flip to kind of a full external solution like Lyft and OneRail in those days. Similarly, kind of end of day where you may have some longer distance deliveries that require a significant deadhead. These are things that you might outsource through OneRail and Lyft. And so I think the partnership makes for a great solution when it comes to optimizing kind of internal fleets and overall cost.
Gentlemen, we are beginning to wind down our time that's left. And here is an all-important question that I want each of you to take a shot at. So let me get right to that. In fact, let me start with Steve as the overall observer of the industry here. How can last mile delivery and fulfillment be a competitive advantage for shippers? Steve, what do you say?
The very short answer is it has to be. The world is not going to get any less complicated anytime soon. We have not seen the last of supply chain disruptions. We've not seen the last of global weather events. I don't know what's going to happen politically in this country in the next couple of years. There are going to be weirdnesses that we do see and don't see coming for quite some time. And so I would argue that any retailer's ability to deliver on the brand promise in ways that either meet or exceed, and let's focus on meet for now, customer expectations, becomes a competitive advantage. Because I think we've all pretty quickly forgotten how strange it got there for a bit. And I think we've all pretty quickly forgotten what it was like when you couldn't get insert activity X product here, right? You couldn't get free weights, you couldn't get pasta sauce, you couldn't get whatever it was that you wanted to get. That's not going away. And so from where we stand, as you said, Russell, as industry observers, Amazon continues its march towards complete and total dominance. It will reach a saturation point where people push back and say, I want to buy from someone else other than you. You want that brand that's other than Amazon to be you. You want to be a brand that people think of as, this brand is not Amazon and can solve my problem in ways that Amazon can't. So to us, the answer is it has to be. It becomes competitive advantage because it becomes competitive differentiation.
Justin, same question to you. Steve says it has to be. What do you say, sir?
Yes, I would certainly agree. We find and we believe that standing up a delivery solution now will give retailers the advantage of learning and optimizing their operations in last mile and same day delivery while that part of the industry is still somewhat nascent, particularly from a retail perspective. And if done now, we're kind of at lead time, but but doing it now would kind of allow you to have it in place before the all important holiday season. So where the mad rush really happens. So again, we know that 80% of shoppers want same day delivery. And thus, if in the next 3 years, this is going to become somewhat ubiquitous, while consumers will require it everywhere, while it will be kind of the minimum standard in doing business from a retail perspective, it doesn't mean that all shippers are going to get it figured out and do it right and do it scalably and profitably. So getting into it now, partnering in the short term and giving yourself the opportunity to do it on your own terms, to find the right partnerships and get operations dialed in, we think is absolutely key. Partnering with someone like Lyft and OneRail, again, a kind of a last mile delivery solution, will unlock significant sustained growth for your retail business and help you stay ahead of the competition, help you future-proof your business against these kind of emergence and in many cases accelerating consumer trends.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Matt, final word for you, sir.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that Steve and Justin just said, and I will add that reliability is key to this. Reliable delivery can be a differentiation for any shipper. And that means having someone else do that for you. Okay, the shippers and the retailers and whoever is doing the shipping should do what they do best, and they sell and they wait on the customers and they do those types of things. Let the delivery companies do what they do best. Get them involved. They're very reliable. They handle all the exceptions. You keep the customer and the shipper retail, that experience in check, and let that side of the business, the delivery side, be done by the OneRails of the world.
Excellent information there, gentlemen. Terrific and useful information as well. But we're going to have to leave it there. That's simply all the time that we have for today. Again, folks, I just want to remind you that if we did not get to your questions, our presenters are prepared to answer them online. If you would look at the screen, the QR code is up. If you want more information, please scan that. Otherwise, information will be emailed to you post-webinar. Okay, many thanks to Justin Paris of Lyft Delivery, Steve Rowan of Retail Systems Research, and Matt Schultz of our sponsor today, OneRail, for sharing their time and their expertise with us. And a big thanks to you for attending today. So long, everybody.